In this video, we are going to explain what a blockchain is in very basic terms. By the end of the video, you'll be able to explain this life-changing technology to those you love, saving them from the authoritative dictatorships that never cease to control your every move. Nevertheless, we don't really discuss politics on this channel, mostly just ideas, so let's get into it. What is a block? In terms of cryptocurrency, a block is just a bunch of data. In fact, the data could be almost anything, but usually it's just a collection of records. For the numero uno crypto, Bitcoin, this data is literally just a list of transactions. For example, it might look like this. X pays Y $50, A pays B $80, and Y pays H $15. If we're dealing with Ethereum, it's usually just transactions, but it can be a few other things, like things called smart contracts, which are really neat, but we'll have time to explain them in another video. For other altcoins, they could be the usage of your Wi-Fi, or files, or documents. Nonetheless, a block is just a collection of records. For this example, to explain what a blockchain is, I'm going to stick with a record of transactions, like in Bitcoin. Specifically, we call this record a ledger because it is a record of value exchanging hands. Now, one thing you need to know is that blocks do have limits, and they can only have so many transactions in them, so we have to keep adding more blocks. For our example, Bitcoin has an average of around 1,500 transactions in one block right now. Now, this number changes, but you don't really need to know why. Just know that these blocks do fill up, and then we have to do something with them. Well, what do we do when these blocks are full? We add them to the network. Now you might be asking, how do we do that? Well, we do something called mine them. And since Bitcoin is a proof of work model, we have to prove that we mined them. This brings us to something called a hash. So the next big question is, what is a hashing function? A hashing function is a system where you can put something into it and it'll output a hash. Now there's a ton of math happening inside this magical black box, but essentially you give it something and it gives you something. In this case, Bitcoin uses the SHA-256 hashing function. SHA stands for Secure Hashing Algorithm, and 256 refers to the amount of zeros and ones that it has in whatever it puts out. So whether you put in your name or the entire dictionary, it'll always output 256 zeros and ones.
Today, cryptocurrencies have become a global phenomenon known by most people, but understood by few. In 2018, you'll have a hard time finding a major bank, accounting firm, software company, or government that hasn't researched cryptocurrencies or started a blockchain project. Beyond the noise and the press releases, many people often fail to understand the basic concepts. So let's walk through the whole story. What are cryptocurrencies? Satoshi invented Bitcoin in 2008 as a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. To realize digital cash, you need a payment network with accounts, balances, and transactions. That's easy to understand. One major problem every payment network has to solve is to prevent double spending. That is, to prevent one entity from spending the same amount twice. Usually, this is done by a central server who keeps records of all the balances. In a decentralized network, you don't have this server, so you need every single entity of the network to do this job. Every peer in the network needs to have a full list with all the transactions to check if future transactions are valid, or an attempt to double spend. But how can these entities keep a consensus about these records? If the peers on the network disagree about one single minor balance, everything breaks. They need absolute consensus. Nobody knew how to achieve this until Satoshi proved it was possible. Cryptocurrencies are a key part of the solution. To illustrate this, we'll look at the transactions on the network. A transaction is a file that says, Bob gives X Bitcoin to Alice and is signed digitally by Bob. Once signed, the transaction is broadcasted to the network, sent from one peer to every other peer. This is standard P2P technology. Nothing special happening here. After a specific amount of time, the transaction gets confirmed. Only miners can confirm transactions. This is their job in a cryptocurrency network. They take transactions, stamp them as legitimate, and spread them in the network. After a transaction is confirmed by a miner, every node has to add it to its database. It has to become part of the blockchain. For this job, the miners are rewarded with cryptocurrency, for example, bitcoins. Anybody can be a miner. They just need to use some of their computer's power to qualify for the task. Every miner competes to solve a cryptographic puzzle. After finding a solution, a miner can confirm the transaction and add it to the blockchain. As an incentive to do this, they then receive a payment from the network in the form of a cryptocurrency. In this way, a network of independent actors are economically incentivized to maintain the legitimacy of the transaction history. So that's the gist of it. Cryptocurrencies are the key to the complex digital cash problem that Satoshi solved: how to maintain integrity and consensus across independent and potentially malicious actors. Cryptocurrencies are essentially the monetary incentive offered to anyone willing to keep the network secure.